Hello there, my name is Rhett Downing. I'm a master's student in mass communication with a strong research focus in communication studies and interpersonal relationships. Today, we're going to be going up, we don't even see the title, Emotional Intelligence Revisited. I've got my serape on because I'm colder than a jackrabbit without any fur in winter. That, and we're in the living room because I've got a heap of clothes that I need to put up, and I didn't want to put them up for this video. So let's dive right in, shall we? High EQ is the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings, to discriminate among them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and action. Use. It's not only the perception, it's not only the understanding, but the utilization. Very difficult to do. Imagine all three, man. Understanding, perceiving, and utilizing. Yeah. High EQ can be associated with career success, personal achievement, relational satisfaction, and increased self-esteem, positive mood, and self-awareness. Look at all those lovely positive effects, my friends. It can also be associated with self-management skills, increased self and social awareness, and improved relational maintenance abilities. Look at all of these positive effects that high EQ can be associated with. Pretty cool, huh? Maybe we should take it a little bit more seriously. Some people don't take EQ very seriously, and that's okay. Some people don't know what it is, and that's okay. That's why we're here today. Now, a lot of times I don't see people go over the cons. I see everybody going over the pros. So here's some possible ones. If you have high EQ, you might be a little bit more associated with sensitivity. You're sensitive to emotions. Maybe. It's a hard maybe. You don't have to be. But it's just something worthy to note. I need some smoothie, man. Green machine, baby. It's a green smoothie. I love it. Possible cons. Communicating is tough work. It is. A lot of us don't like doing it. And that's okay. It's draining. Golly, I say draining at least once in every video. It's tough. And a lot of times it can be, what's the right word I'm looking for? Uncomfortable. 100%. 100%. I'll give you an example. I've learned in my own life. So, anecdotal experience. When it comes to emotion, let's say crying. I've learned to not cry in front of anyone but my father. That is my own learning. Okay? I should not cry in front of anyone but my father. Now, that might be a hot take, depending on to whom you're talking. A lot of people might say open up to your partner. Sure. Yeah, if you're close enough with them. Yeah, of course. But in my own experience, I don't want to cry in front of anyone but my father. Now, I'm not suggesting you follow what I've learned, but this stems into the idea that emotions can be perceived as weakness, right? And I think that's across the board. I think a lot of people understand that. So, play these things by ear. It's a beautiful thing to play things by ear. I say that in a lot of videos too. Take into consideration all the positive effects of high EQ, and take into consideration the cons also. Golly, y'all can see why I don't record out here. The ambiance is loud. Must be my neighbors. Maybe they're cooking. They have their fan on or something. Those things are louder than a raccoon with a pair of boxing gloves, dude. Anyway, I'm sidetracking. Communicating is tough work. Yes. Now, the example I just gave, I do believe, bleeds into perception. So I'm going to try and reiterate a little bit more clearly. Communicating is tough work, and very few people like to do it because it takes mental energy. Perceiving and understanding and utilizing emotions is tough. It's a skill. Some people may be a little bit better at it than others at the beginning, but you hone it like any other skill. Okay? So that example with my father bleeds into perception. So the perception of emotions can be dangerous given the context. It doesn't have to be with crying. It can be any emotion. Say, for instance, you get angry. If you get too angry, there's going to be a stigma. Say you get sad. If you get too sad, there may be a stigma. Maybe I should say, maybe a stigma. I've noticed when it comes to anger, though, if you raise your voice slightly in front of a crowd, a lot of times they perceive that to be 10 notches above what you think it might be. And then when it comes to crying, perceptions of it are dangerous. That's my whole point here. Perceptions of emotion can be dangerous. So in my life, I've learned as a man, if I cry in front of the wrong people, the perception of it is most likely going to be, guess what? Sensitive and weak. And so what I've learned is that I should only cry in front of my father. Now, maybe one of these days if I get a wife, I can cry in front of her. But even then, I don't want to cry in front of anybody else than my father. So take that example with a grain of salt. Weigh your experiences a lot heavier than mine, okay? Everyone's going to do that anyway, but I want to say that with my own voice and my own words. And the whole overarching point is that there are possible cons. Possible. Okay? Possible cons. Now, I often also don't hear people talking about how to improve EQ. Reading about EQ, and I think this is just my 2 cents. I think reading fiction might help too. Because you place yourself in the character's shoes. And part of EQ is being able to put yourself in others' shoes. Discussing your feelings and emotions. A lot of people don't want to do that. It's understandable. A lot of people do. That stems into trauma bonding, right? Going up to somebody and just dumping all their feelings and emotions on them. What I've learned is that there are good outlets. Writing is 1,000% my outlet for thoughts, feelings, and emotions. 1,000%. And even those I have to take with a grain of salt, because they're just thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I say just. Given this context, you don't weigh your entire world on thoughts, feelings, and emotions. You have experiences. Anyway, that's not the point. Thinking on your feelings and emotions. One of these days, sit down and ask yourself how you're feeling. You would not believe what happens. You can practically feel the neurons in your brain connecting. Practically. I like to think of it that way. That happens typically during sleep, if I'm not mistaken. So, and here's a tip. If you don't want to feel something, think about it. I'll give you an example. If you don't want to be angry, think on why you're angry. I do this all the time. Sometimes I don't even mean to because I want to feel for my writing. So say, for instance, I'm sad. And I start to think, why am I sad? I lose the feeling. And I start thinking on a different wavelength, I suppose I could say. And so where would I feel sadness? Where do I feel sadness? Gut, maybe? Heavy. Let's use something a little bit more straightforward. Anger, right? Rises through your belly sometimes, up through the sternum, up through the collarbone, up through the neck, and then you can sometimes feel it in the head because you're just trying to throw everything out there, right? If I were to be angry and ask myself, why do I feel angry? All of those feelings I just described and pointed to, all of that would go away. every single bit of it, and I would start thinking of it a little bit more logically, cognitively. Cool, right? And then listening. I like to people watch. So this also helps with dialogue since I write books. But listen to other people's conversations. And then if you're having a conversation with someone, really try and listen to them. How do they feel? Ask yourself. Then try and put yourself in their shoes. Those are some good improvements. Now, there were some other videos, probably the last video I talked about emotional intelligence. I want to say this a little bit more elegantly. EQ can be reflected to an extent. I say to an extent to save my own hide. EQ can be reflected to an extent in our gender. Women are typically more associated with higher EQ. That is also can be reflected in their professions. Remember the last video I had to come back in another segment and try and clarify? This is what I'm talking about. Women are typically associated with higher EQ. Since that's the case, they often go into professions that involve people. Men are associated with having less EQ than women, and it's often reflected in the professions they go into. For women, think of nurses. For men, think of mechanics. Men often choose professions having to do with things, objects. Women often go into professions that have to do with people, which oftentimes, you see where I'm coming from? It's a beeline, my friends. It's a beeline. Typically, you have to have a little bit higher EQ to deal with people. I love it. It's great. One last thing. I noticed in one of my videos I used my roommate as an example. I thought he had a few narcissistic traits, and I told y'all that I just ignored him. Now, in another video, ignoring is very dangerous. It's been a couple years since that experience. But I even considered going back and revising that video, saying, well, I wouldn't suggest ignoring someone at all. And I had to sit myself down and think about why I ignored him, because, hey man, let's be real here. Not very emotionally intelligent of me to do that. I was quite scared of the guy. I'm going to be honest with you. I was scared of him. Every single day, nearly, I'd walk into the house, and I have a key, so he would know that I'm the one coming in, because I have a key. Every single day, I'd walk into the house, he'd be upstairs, and he'd put a round in the chamber of his pistol. I'm not kidding. And he'd make it really loud. And he'd walk around the corner to make sure it was me. Now, personally, I think he was trying to show off in some really strange way. But it just, I mean, you walk into that every day. It wasn't a good experience. I shouldn't have lived there. As a matter of fact, I told management to get me out. Please, dear God, get me out. Got very upset with the guys. Like, this is not good. Not good. So, from an emotionally intelligent perspective, one likely shouldn't ignore somebody. That can easily turn into abuse, by the way. Because the example I gave in that video, too, is obviously it was upsetting him. Maybe I shouldn't upset somebody who loads a bullet into the chamber of his pistol every single time I walk through the door. He would do that with guests, by the way, too. Because I would, yeah. They would always laugh. I don't know if it was a nervous laugh or not, but besides the point. So as far as emotionally intelligent things go, and communication go, instead of ignoring him, I probably ought to have, I already did steer clear of him. I shouldn't have been in this situation in the first place. So, anyway, I wanted to clarify that too. All this said, emotional intelligence is a ridiculously broad topic. Obviously. Look at all this stuff, man. Monitoring, and feelings and discrimination and all the pros, some of the cons. Big, broad topic. I suppose if you want to take something from this, take the tempering. I say tempering on purpose because EQ is a skill. You temper it. You hone it. Take this stuff. If you want to be a little bit more emotionally intelligent, be able to understand and perceive and utilize your emotions as well as others. Reading is a good way to do this. Both reading about EQ and reading novels. Discussing your feelings and emotions a little bit more with the right person. Absolutely with the right person. Thinking on your feelings and emotions. You don't have to do this with somebody. That's the beauty in thinking. You can do it on your own. Sit yourself down on your bed one of these days. Consider thinking about how you feel. Sounds cheesy. But hey, opens a lot of doors. I love doing it. And listening. That can bleed into active listening too. We really ought to try to actively listen to people. That, my dear friends, is all I have for us. Now, what I'm going to do is go drink my green smoothie. Be a green machine. And I'm going to see y'all in the next video because it's going to be a good one. Salud.